Hello and welcome to Careers Talks Live with Max from the Young Project. And with this episode, we have Helen Wright from Trent Bridge. How are you doing, Helen?
Not bad, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
No, you're welcome. Not at all. You could be YouTube famous in no time. I guess we should start off this one by kind of asking, what is your job role? What does that entail?
So I'm the HR manager at Trent Bridge, and some people say, what does HR mean? So HR basically means human resources, and that entails me looking after sort of anything people related within Trent Bridge. So that it goes through the whole employee life cycle. So it starts at the recruitment stage. So that involves me interviewing people, and then sending out the contract of employment to the correct candidate that we've picked. It also involves sort of when they leave as well, so when they go on to pastures new, and then day to day, I did write a list because sometimes I forget what I do. And it's been a long time, hasn't it, since I've done anything normal with all this furlough. So day to day, we do things like changes to terms and conditions. So if someone gets a promotion, we deal with that. Organising training for staff to try and develop our staff. Looking at maternity and paternity, so if anyone goes on maternity, we look after them, and any fathers that go on paternity leave, we look after them as well. Then there's a sickness, holiday queries, and answering general queries in general. Looking after the performance review process, so performance review process is which not many employees enjoy doing, but it's basically where we look at the previous year's performance, and they sit down with their manager and they talk through what they think they've achieved, how well they've done, if there's been any improvements that they need to make perhaps. So it's my sort of role to ensure that all managers and employees do that every year. Any discipline and grievancy processes, so if, for example, an employee's perhaps fallen a bit short of the standards that we expect at Trent Bridge, we might have to sort of start a disciplinary process with them to help them get back to the standard where they should be at. Grievances, if anyone has an issue with the manager maybe, then it would be HR that would get involved in that and try and sort that out. And then strategically, so looking forward, how we can sort of improve the culture at Trent Bridge by making sure that the processes and policies are up to date and professional and sort of in line with what's employment law and legal. So we're just about to launch a new holiday system, online holiday system as well. And that's where, rather than employees filling in their holiday on a form, they do it on the system, but that's going to launch in the next few days.
Oh, how exciting.
I know, so you'll get an email shortly about that.
Lovely. So yeah, basically, I guess if HR deals with any people-related problems, that's pretty much the summary, isn't it, of everything. So again, I think for many young people, HR is not kind of at the forefront of their mind. Maybe they've not thought about like HR as a career pathway because it's not one that's necessarily pushed that much when you're younger. And I don't imagine that it's the sort of thing that not many people kind of go, oh, when I'm older, I want to work in HR. So I think it's important to kind of explore like the roots and kind of how you got into it. What was your kind of route to get to where you are?
So I also didn't know anything about HR when I was at sort of school. So I went to uni and did a business studies degree because I didn't actually really know what I wanted to do. When I finished uni or joined the degree, I did a few HR modules, which I really enjoyed. And that's where I sort of thought this is something I'd like to go into. So went back into the world of work, went back to a sales job and absolutely hated it because I realised that it wasn't personal, wasn't dealing with people how I wanted to deal with them. So went back to uni and did my master's in HR for a year, full time, so wasn't at work. And then after that, moved down to London and got a job in HR administration. And then basically just worked my way up through there. So each job that I moved on to, I made sure that the role title was a step up. So HR admin, HR advisor, stuff like that. So that's the way I did it really. And then that brought me back here to Trent Bridge as HR manager.
Wow. So when you say back here, were you at Trent Bridge before and then you came back, or is that?
Oh, sorry, back to Nottingham. So when I moved to London, I did all my HR career in London, and then I came back to Nottingham to do this role eventually.
We have a question in the chat which says, you say that part of your job is interviewing people. What do you look for when interviewing someone?
So it definitely depends on what role it is. So normally within the interview, questions. There will be certain things that we look for depending on what skills are needed for which role. So there'll be certain roles, for example, might need certain qualifications and certain experience. So we'll ask around the experience and what they've got that's relevant to the role that we're interviewing for. But also fit as well. So fit to the company, fit to the culture. Because not everybody would perhaps, like Max was saying earlier, get on with the sport and environment. So you definitely have to be a good fit as well for that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I mean, I'm not saying that I work in HR or anything like that, but obviously as an HR person, I would presume that you'd be part of putting together like the job description and person specification. And so when you're like going for an interview or whatever, to kind of add to your question, Connie, here, you would kind of interview people based on what's in the person specification. So your person specification is basically like what you want the ideal person to be like who's coming into the role, and your job description explains exactly what the role is. So the person knows what they're looking for and what the job is that they're going to be doing before they go to the interview.
Yeah.
And then the interview questions would be kind of based on trying to get the person from that person's specification into the company. Does that make more sense? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it does.
So we mentioned qualifications earlier as well.
Yeah.
And you said you got like a master's degree and you got a business studies degree. What other kind of qualifications do you have apart from that? Because I know you can do professional bodies and memberships alongside degrees and since then, but also what qualification, I don't know if you know like what qualifications you need to get into HR.
Yep. So as part of my master's, I did a CIPD qualification, which stands for Chartered Institute Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. That's a bit of a mouthful. But that's basically what, if you go into HR, a lot of organisations will ask that you have that, because that's almost the standard that people work to within HR, so that you've got the knowledge and the expertise to be able to do the role. It's not required in all roles, so a lot of the sort of admin assistant roles, you don't necessarily need it, but as you work up the ladder to HR advisor, HR manager, HR business partner, the companies, general companies will ask for that as part of your experience. But a lot of companies as well will allow you to study that while you're working for them, and some companies will even pay for you to study the CIPD whilst working for them. So yeah, it's not a must to get into HR, but eventually that probably will be what you're asked for. So
I mean, I've not written it down as a question, but I'm interested. So what is like the kind of progression for like getting into HR or this kind of thing? So you said, like, is it advisor to business partner? Is that all of the steps, or?
It depends. So a lot of companies call the roles differently. So I've done an assistant and an administrator role, but in some companies they're classed as the same. In some companies they're slightly different, but they're sort of the entry roles, if you like, entry level roles. The next level up would be more of an advisory role. And then the level above that would either be, depending which area of HR you wanted to go into, a HR business partner role or HR manager role. But generally they're quite a similar role. It's just that the business partner role would perhaps speak to the business a lot more and work more closely with the business and the managers, if you like.
Got you. Okie doke. Got another question. How many people work in the HR department at Trent Bridge, and is doing an apprenticeship a valid way into HR?
So there's only 2 people in the HR department at Trent Bridge, so me and Jodie. So we're quite a small department, but generally HR departments are quite small. So you'd have, like I said, the assistant administrator, advisor, maybe manager, and then HR director. And you might have a couple of each role, but generally the HR departments are quite small. And apprenticeship, yes, definitely. That's a really good way to get into it. Definitely, I'd recommend that as well. Yeah.
Cool. So for anyone wanting to get into this sort of role, what advice or tips do you have on how to kind of maximise your chances?
So a lot of HR is around admin. So I'd say if you can gain experience in administration, or sort of maybe data entry, so entering things into systems, because especially in the entry level roles, it's a lot of data entry, and sort of administration, sending out contracts and paperwork. So if you can get any experience around that, that would really help. I did mention the CIPD earlier, but actually you don't necessarily need that entry role. So I would say just try and get into the experience around dealing with people, and administration, and then the entry roles, you'd be fine in those doing that.
Because I was going to say, yeah, presumably for the CIPD stuff, you'd have to pay for that and alongside, yeah.
Yeah. So I can't remember how much it cost me when I did mine, maybe a couple of grand. But you can, a lot of organisations will pay for them, like I said, and they'll let you have time out to go to the courses and do the course.
And how long does that last? Is that like a year?
Normally they're 2 years.
Yeah.
Normally it's 2 years if you do it part-time while you're working as well. So you'd go every week to college or uni, whatever it is, to study that.
Cool. So what does a typical day look like for you? I appreciate that at the moment there's no such thing as a typical day, and maybe in general, but like, is there such thing as, a typical day in your role?
Not really, because every day is different, and that's what I really enjoy about HR. So when you're dealing with people, there's different personalities, there's different sort of roles that you need to deal with. So every single day is different. But a normal day, I'd probably say, starts with sort of reading emails, checking emails, and responding to emails. And then I normally have a to-do list, so try and tick off or write to-do list for the day, or if I haven't managed to finish off the day before, start on those. But it's more around, for me anyway, in my role, a bit more strategic. So it would be working on big projects, pulling together stuff like that. So as I mentioned, the holiday system, so that involved a lot of research into which company we were going to go with, what was the best way to do it, how we're going to implement that in the company, the communications that we were going to send to people. So at my level, there's a lot more sort of less admin and maybe doing, and more sort of trying to oversee things. Yeah, more forward thinking.
And I guess, with a lot of jobs, the higher you go up, the more strategic that you have to be, because like, as you raise the ranks, you get more responsibility. So, you don't have to do so much the kind of day-to-day admin stuff. It's more about thinking ahead and planning ahead for what you can kind of do as a whole. Yeah,
definitely. And a lot of HR is trying to keep on top of the new employment law changes, making sure that we are sort of legal and by the book. So a lot of that means a lot of research. And that's where the CIPD comes in handy, because it gives you a lot of tools and resources to go to check that actually, since there's employment law changes every April, so checking that we are in line with that and how to implement the new changes and things like that. So that does help.
Great. So what would you say was like the biggest factor that's helped you in your career so far?
Biggest
hard
factor.
question, though. I mean, it might not be that like there's one single thing. It could be a whole host of things. But is there anything or experience or step which you feel has impacted you?
So I would say when I moved to London, that helped me, because when I first started in HR, there wasn't that many opportunities here in Nottingham, only because HR is quite a new thing that's just come onto a lot of companies' agendas. So before then, perhaps they would have outsourced it to HR companies, but now people are quite important to companies, and so that's sort of a new agenda thing. But HR is now, there are more HR opportunities in Nottingham, but when I first went into it, there wasn't that many. So when I moved to London, that gave me way more opportunity than up here. So that probably helped me the most to get into HR. But nowadays there's so many opportunities up here. But yeah,
there's opportunities everywhere, isn't there? I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, it was quite rare when I first went into HR. I think that's perhaps why not a lot of people know what it is, because it's not, the departments are quite small, and it's quite a new thing, if you like.
Yeah, as I said, I don't think it's as publicised as maybe it could be as a career pathway, but definitely if you're a people person, it could be a great one to explore. And I think you kind of answered two questions in one with your last answer, which is great. But I'm going to ask it anyway in case your answer is different. It was kind of on the other foot, like what's like the biggest obstacle you had in getting to where you are today, and how did you overcome it? Was it the fact that there was a lack of job, or was there something else which kind of limited you? Or
jobs was the main thing, but also on a personal level, my own confidence, and that was me trying to overcome that, and knowing that I do know my stuff from the experience I gained through all my roles. I've got my experience behind me, and I do know my stuff. So just backing myself to go for it really. But mainly the job opportunity.
So like, how did you kind of overcome your like confidence side of things?
It's don't know really. So just realizing that I have got the experience and the knowledge, and just really, like I said, trying to back myself, but also using the CIPD a lot, so knowing that that's there to support me if I need any advice and help, because that is really useful. Because the thing with HR, things are changing all the time, so you want to make sure that you're up to date. So using the resources around me, but also using the HR network that I've got. So a lot of people, if you've worked in HR or you've worked with people in other companies and then moved on, you still sort of keep in contact with them. And then it's a good thing to say, how are you guys doing this? What's the best way to do it? And they'll give advice. So there is a lot of networking in HR that helps as well. So,
Yeah. And I think like maybe on the confidence side of things, because I think young people will potentially relate to that quite a lot. Like when you've not had the experience, it can be difficult to kind of throw yourself out and put yourself in the deep end. But I suppose that the more that you experience, the kind of better that you become at things, the more that you kind of believe in what you're saying. And I think especially in HR, because you can have some quite difficult conversations, or you're forced to have some difficult conversations, that like it can be more challenging. Like, what did you struggle in like having those conversations initially? Because I think it's quite a big barrier, isn't it, potentially?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it all comes with experience. So you're not always going to get it right, perhaps the first few times, but the more you do get the experience, the more it helps. It's like with anything, isn't it? I think that the more you do and the more you learn on the job, the better it is. So whereas I went to do my master's in HR, I think if I'd have done it differently, I probably wouldn't have done that, and I would have started in a HR role earlier and got that on the job experience that would have helped me probably a little bit sooner to get that confidence and get that knowledge and experience.
Oh, it's almost like you got my questions in front of you.
I didn't pre-read them. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, you said about like
oh gosh,
your iPad's gone. No worries. So yeah, you said about kind of changing, you change like going into work and going into the job sooner. Is there anything else that you would have changed about your kind of route in and what you've done so far in getting to where you want to be, or like, I don't know?
Just that really. So from uni, I probably would have gone into a lower level entry role, so the HR admin role, and just probably gained a lot of experience from there first, and then used the company that I was with to pay for my CIPD, I think, and do it that way. So I was studying whilst working, because I think you can then, what you're learning, you can sort of put into context in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think that probably would have been my preferred option had I known what I know now.
Absolutely. We've got another question in the chat which says, do you deal with casual workers such as stewards as well as full-time members of staff, and how many are there?
Yeah, so we deal with the casual workers as well. There's about, I think, 350 stewards, and that includes the stewards that actually sort of steward the cricket, but also the hospitality guys as well. So we have a lot of sort of bar and catering staff that we bring on as casuals throughout the summer.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though, because obviously they're all on kind of more temporary things, aren't they? And I think I was speaking to Malcolm and about like the stewards and stuff, and just about how many, because you said there's like 350, but with like a normal kind of county cricket game, they only have about 10 stewards or something like that,
Yeah.
on the games. Whereas with an international game, they have like 250 or
Yeah.
350. And I just thought that was crazy, because to have that difference and that step up between the two, it's just
It's a lot of organising, isn't it?
How does it work in terms of, because obviously, so you deal with the training and stuff in terms of like employees and whatnot, but I know that for stewards, for example, they have like particular guidelines and stuff that they need to abide by, and they have like very specific training that they go on. Do you deal with that, or is that like kind of dealt with on a department level?
Yeah, that would be dealt with by Malcolm. So he's qualified to do that training. So he will take all that training, because it has to be specific steward training. So he would deal with all of that. But we would send out all of the contracts to them at the beginning of the season, and get them on the payroll system. So that's mainly our role, to do with the stewards.
And then another question says, is it your job to do work rotas for casual staff? Which I guess you kind of answered.
No. Again, that would be Malcolm, because he knows which kind of stewards he needs on what match days and where he needs them to work. So it would be him that would do the rotas for the casual stewards.
Awesome. Then the last question that I've got for you, and then unless people have got other questions, is what's the most important lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
Definitely to proofread and double check everything before you send it out, because there have been incidences where I've sent the wrong thing to the wrong person, and it's ended disastrously. So definitely proofread everything for a start, and then maybe just get someone to double check and say, because I think sometimes you think it reads like what you think it reads, but then because you've read it so many times, it doesn't. So and then maybe get someone to check it, because there's been a couple of times that in my earlier career, when I sent out the wrong thing to the wrong person, which happens, everyone's human, but I think that's definitely would be my advice in the HR role.
I was going to say, I think as well, like, because as you said, for HR, you have to kind of cover yourself from like a legal perspective. You have to kind of be careful with how you word things as well, and like how they could be perceived, because it's, the tone and stuff of what you write could so easily be perceived. So you've got to make sure that everything's watertight from your end as well, and that must be quite a challenge too.
Yeah, definitely. So what I normally tend to do is make sure that we have template letters that are like legally employment HR legally sort of binding, and just use those, but obviously amend the name and address and everything for whoever I'm sending it to. But that's an easy way to make sure that the letters we're sending out are standardised and sort of all the same.
And then we've got another question which says, do you have an apprenticeship scheme at Trent Bridge?
We don't currently. Yeah, we don't currently. We do have people doing apprenticeships, but currently we don't have any sort of apprenticeship vacancies, unfortunately.
But we do try and kind of employ young people and stuff wherever we can, and especially with the levy stuff which is happening at the moment as well, it gives more of an incentive to have more apprenticeships, and I would imagine that there will be more.
Hopefully,
yeah. But I think, that'll be something for the future when we're kind of more adapted to the circumstances, I would say.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure, I don't know if you'd agree with that, but
yeah, no, I would agree.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've got anything else that you want to say, or there we go. How do you get to find out when they become available?
So if we do have vacancies, we'll advertise it, and normally that'll be sort of on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on our website, so that any vacancies will be advertised.
Yeah, so I guess like just keep an eye out, and on the socials and stuff on those pages. Trent Bridge has a jobs page as well, I believe, doesn't it?
Yeah, so on the website, specific vacancy page.
I'd keep an eye out on that. as and when. Or like, I mean, even so, like it might just be worth periodically kind of dropping an email into the questions inbox and just
definitely,
or into like myself or whatever, and just ask the question, because you don't know unless you ask, do you?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So you're welcome. Is there anything else that you want to add, Helen, that you've not kind of said?
No, not really. No, no, just yeah. In my opinion, I think sometimes qualifications you don't necessarily need them. So, like I was saying, the CIPD thing, it's more for me. I would say get in there and get some experience, and you learn a lot on the job. You learn more on the job than you do from sort of doing the qualifications, really, in a HR perspective, anyway.
Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to Helen for being a part of this. Really appreciate your time.
No worries.
And you can check the link in the description, where it will have a links where you can sign up, and there'll also be all of our social media, all of the information on there. There's a playlist as well with all of the different careers talks live, so you can find out all the different careers that we've covered. And yes, we'll see you in the next one.